everyone, welcome to day 4 of the 2024 eShopperReviews Game Awards, where we look at the best and worst games released on Nintendo Switch in 2024. I'm Jen Ip.
And I'm Jake McNeil.
And today's awards, the Genre Awards, are about the best games in each genre. Best action game, best RPG, that sort of thing.
Yep.
So, we'll be starting out with a genre that I don't care for.
Well, this isn't about you.
Yes, I know. The first up is Best Platformer.
Obviously, on Nintendo Switch, Nintendo has a lot of good platformers, so you really have to stand out in this category to be selected.
So, what are the runners-up?
The runners-up for Best Platformer on Nintendo Switch in 2024 are Neva, Goliath Depot, Bzzzt, Super Monkey Ball Banana Rumble, and Promenade.
And the winner?
The winner for Best Platformer on Nintendo Switch in 2024 is Sonic X Shadow Generations. So, Sonic X Shadow Generations starts out by being a kind of remaster of Sonic Generations, which was already a pretty good Sonic game. However, that in and of itself wouldn't qualify it for this award because that is an older game. Sonic X Shadow Generations does something special, and very much like Super Mario 3D World did when it came to Nintendo Switch, it adds a whole other new game on top of that, and that is Shadow Generations. And while I enjoyed Sonic Generations, I feel like Shadow Generations is probably the best 3D Sonic game I have ever played. It is really good. It doesn't suffer from a problem that I feel like a lot of Sonic games do, which is they emphasize speed so much that they de-emphasize the gameplay. This game, I feel like, strikes a really good balance, and it really, I feel like, places the focus on all the things that Sonic games do right without getting into all the stuff that they do wrong. It's just an all-around great game.
Next up is Best Arcade or Party Game. How do you define that?
I tend to look at arcade games being fairly simple, fairly contained to just one thing or one type of thing. They can be a little repetitive, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Party games are similar in a lot of ways, but they have more of a multiplayer focus. Both of these, I feel like, have a lot of crossover between them. So I feel like they make sense to put in the same category together.
Okay, so what are the runners-up?
The runners-up for Best Arcade or Party Game on Nintendo Switch in 2024 are Servonauts, Vivitor, Peglin, Super Monkey Ball Banana Rumble, and PlateUp.
And the winner?
The winner is Super Mario Party Jamboree.
Oh, talking about that game again makes me want to play it. It's a good game.
Obviously, when you're talking about party games, kind of the king of the genre is Mario Party. And it's hard to think of any other game winning that this year in particular because, as I've said before, I feel like this is the best Mario Party game we have ever gotten. So this was a no-brainer. This was always going to win this award, I feel.
Next up is Best Action Game. Seems straightforward, so let's get into it. Who are the runners-up?
The runners-up for Best Action Game on Nintendo Switch in 2024 are Gory Cuddly Carnage, Go Mecha Ball, Under Night In-Birth 2 Sis Celeste, Berserk Boy, and Geometry Survivor.
And the winner?
The winner for Best Action Game on Nintendo Switch in 2024 is Crypt Stalker. This one I mentioned earlier in the week. This is a really good kind of old school action platformer, kind of styled after the Castlevania games, but it's actually 2-in-1. It has both one that's styled after the original NES games and styled after Game Boy games, and both of them are well worth playing. It's just all around a really great retro style game.
All right, next up is Best Metroidvania, and please tell me what is a Metroidvania.
I feel like you might already know, but maybe our listeners don't.
No.
So, a Metroidvania, to give you an idea, is named after the Metroid and Castlevania series. It's kind of a portmanteau of both of those. And it's in reference to a certain type of game that a lot of those games have specialized in, which has you exploring a map, going through different paths on that map, and returning back after you've gained some new ability that opens up new areas you couldn't access before. Some prominent examples of Metroidvanias are Metroid Dread, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, and Hollow Knight.
And what are the runners-up?
The runners-up for Best Metroidvania on Nintendo Switch in 2024 are Void Rot, Animal Well, and Nine Souls.
And the winner?
The winner for Best Metroidvania on Nintendo Switch in 2024 is Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. I should say, even though there weren't a full 5 runners-up in this category, I feel like Metroidvanias on Nintendo Switch in 2024 were pretty stacked.
Yeah.
Nine Souls and Animal Well in particular are really excellent games. And I feel like in any other year, either of those could have won it. But Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, I feel like exemplifies many of the elements you look for in a really great Metroidvania. There's a lot of really good exploration. There's all sorts of cool new abilities to get. The platforming is really good. The combat is excellent. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown is one game where I feel like it does so much so well that it's hard to compete with it. And it definitely wins my pick for Best Metroidvania this year.
Best roguelike. And before we get into it, explain what is a roguelike.
Roguelike is named after a game called Rogue. The main idea that's kind of consistent throughout roguelikes is that you're going through a game multiple times. Usually it's challenging to the point where you're not likely going to get all the way through the game before the end. And there's some randomized element each time where you're getting different abilities, you're going through a different map, you might be fighting different enemies. And so the idea is to kind of try and get a good run where you get the right mix of abilities and stuff so that you can get as far as possible. Some prominent examples of roguelike games include The Binding of Isaac, Spelunky, Slay the Spire, and Hades.
Oh, Hades. Good game. So what are the runners-up?
The runners-up for Best Roguelike on Nintendo Switch in 2024 are Shogun Showdown, Dice Folk, Wand Project, Peglin, and Geometry Survivor.
And the winner?
The winner for Best Roguelike on Nintendo Switch in 2024 is Balatro. Balatro, I would be surprised if you hadn't heard of it at this point. Jen.
It is actually trending on Steam. It's been on my store page for my featured store page. So yeah, it's also getting traction on the PC.
Yeah, it's been getting a lot of really good word of mouth, and for good reason. This is a card-based roguelike game that a lot of people are comparing to Slay the Spire.
Yes.
But it also has some distinct differences too. From the outside looking in, this game just looks like playing poker, with a standard deck of, hearts, spades, all those kinds of cards. But Balatro takes it in a different direction where you're not playing against an opponent, you're playing against a score. And as you progress through the game, you are improving your deck by changing up the cards in your deck, maybe removing the weak scoring cards, maybe improving the way that some cards score. And you're also getting joker cards that sit in your tableau and add multipliers and stuff to the cards based on what you have. And it takes a really simple concept, this is just kind of using the rules of poker, and it expands on it in interesting ways that makes it something more, something really interesting while still being accessible. And it's tons of fun. You could sink hundreds of hours into this game.
All right, next up we have Best Action RPG. We had action before, but why action RPG?
Action RPGs are games that kind of mix elements of action games and RPGs, where traditional RPGs tend to have you selecting things out of menus. An action RPG actually has you going over and bopping that monster on the head or whatever it is you're doing. And I feel like that's distinct enough from RPGs that I keep them separate.
And what are the runners-up?
The runners-up for action RPGs on Nintendo Switch in 2024 are Master Key, Natsuman 20th Century Summer Kid, Lottle Knot, Ease X Nordics, and Grounded.
Oh, Grounded. All right, and the winner?
The winner is The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. I think it's probably fair to say The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom is not as big a game as last year's The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Not even close.
No.
However, in its own way, it's still a ton of fun, really unique and original, and super creative. And it takes some inspiration from the same kind of gameplay you had in Tears of the Kingdom, where in that one, you were creating structures and things that you could make, vehicles to assist you throughout the game. In this one, you're creating all the various objects and enemies and combining them in interesting ways to get past obstacles or to fight for you. And that creates all sorts of fun, unique situations in this game. It makes for some interesting puzzles. And overall, I thought it was just a really enjoyable game start to finish.
Next is Best RPG, where we focus on the menu-based type of RPGs.
Yep.
So who are the runners-up?
The runners-up for Best RPG on Nintendo Switch in 2024 are Witch Spring R, Card and Seal, Mario and Luigi Brothership, and Inculinati.
Who is the winner?
The winner for Best RPG on Nintendo Switch in 2024 is Unicorn Overlord. Again, this game really caught me by surprise. I was not expecting it to be as good as it is. It has a huge world to explore, all kinds of challenges to face, all kinds of options for upgrading your characters and recruiting new characters. And it's a beautiful world, great soundtrack. I feel like this game does so much right, and it's so unique. It is not to be missed.
Next up is Best Strategy Game. And how do you define this?
I mean, you could define so many different things as a strategy game, but usually when we talk about strategy, we're talking about managing multiple units or managing resources, or most importantly, focusing on positioning your character or characters relative to enemies.
All right, and who are the runners-up?
The runners-up for Best Strategy Game on Nintendo Switch in 2024 are Fragrant Story and Papaya's Path, Shogun Showdown, Inculinati, and Hero's Hour.
And the winner?
The winner, once again, is Unicorn Overlord.
Okay.
This is a game that straddles both RPG and strategy, and I feel like it does both of those elements well. I talked a moment ago about changing up your characters and exploring the world and all that stuff, but one of the things that makes this a bit different is that your units are moving on a map in real time, and you have to choose where they're moving to fend off enemies as they're moving on the map in real time too. And it's kind of a unique real-time blend of strategy and RPG that you don't really see much in games, and it does it so very well.
Best Graphic Adventure or Visual Novel. And I feel like you don't need to explain this.
I don't know that a lot of people use the term graphic adventure. It's what I prefer. Some people call it just a point-and-click game or something like that.
Yeah. Okay.
But I feel like that's not really describing the full genre. Basically, we're talking about games where story is the focus. A graphic adventure has you going around and solving puzzles, where a visual novel is just focusing on the story and maybe choosing different dialogue paths to split the story in different directions.
All right, so who are the runners-up?
The runners-up for Best Graphic Adventure or Visual Novel are Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, The Holy Gosh Darn, Thank Goodness You're Here, 1000X Resist, and Lil Guardsman.
And the winner?
The winner for Best Graphic Adventure or Visual Novel on Nintendo Switch in 2024 is Pentiment. Pentiment is a game that's kind of set in medieval times, and you play as a scribe who gets caught up in a murder mystery. And something this game does that's really amazing is it is clearly very well studied, very well researched. They made sure to get every detail right here to show what things were like in the era this game takes place in. Your character, being an artisan, is doing his work for the church, which is kind of how things were done with artists and artisans at the time. And it kind of explores what it was like to be in that dynamic, what it was like to be in that society. And you get all sorts of choices through the story that really make you feel like you're living through this story in this other time period. The characters are really interesting. The art style is really amazing and does a great job of kind of putting you in the shoes of this classical artist kind of person. It's just all around a really great game in this genre.
All right, next up is Best Puzzle Game. And this is pretty straightforward, so who are the runners up?
Yeah, so the runners up for Best Puzzle Game in 2024 on Nintendo Switch are Monospaced Lovers, Tetris Forever, Dungeons of Dreadrock 2, The Dead King's Secret, Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, and Oxytone.
And the winner?
The winner for Best Puzzle Game on Nintendo Switch in 2024 is Animal Well. Animal Well, I already mentioned being a really good Metroidvania, but its focus, I feel, is mainly on the puzzles. And this game has some really interesting environmental puzzles that make use of what are basically toys that you collect as you go through the game. And you have to be really thoughtful in terms of how you're making use of these toys, how they interact with the environment, and you have to really think about how these can be put to use in interesting and unique ways. I mean, even something like a slinky or a frisbee can turn into something unexpected in this game. And what's more than that, I'm just talking about the very highest top layer of the puzzles. This game is segmented into multiple layers that you don't even need to get into the really deep stuff here. But people who are really interested in the deep puzzle solving of this game have dived into the code of this game, where there's hidden stuff in the code that you need to decipher and figure out what it means in order to get to secret hidden areas of the game. There's stuff that I couldn't even fathom how to get into, that people have found this game to be just a layer after layer of puzzling joy, so to speak. I can't get into any of that. All I can react to is the stuff I've seen, but even just the topmost layer of this game is absolutely delightfully well-crafted puzzles.
Next up is Best Card/Board/Dice Game. And there's 3 types of games in one, but it kind of makes sense. So who are the runners up?
Yeah, kind of video games based on more like physical games that you might play in real life. So the runners-up in this category are Stacklands, Card and Seal, Super Mario Party Jamboree, Dice Folk, and Quilts and Caps of Calico.
And the winner?
The winner for Best Card, Board, or Dice Game is Balatro. Again, some really strong competitors in this category this year, but I feel like when it comes to a game that really brings in that element of an actual physical game that you're playing in digital form, Balatro does a great job of saying, what if poker played more like this? And well, I don't think you could get away with playing poker like this in real life because it would involve doing all kinds of messed up things to the cards. I mean, that's one of the brilliant things about taking this into a video game, is it allows you to do things you couldn't do with the physical game. And I think more than the other games on this list, this really balances out those elements just beautifully.
Next up, we have Best Driving/Racing/Sports Games.
In the past, I've had these in separate categories, but there have been fewer sports and racing games on Nintendo Switch that I've played this year, so they kind of got jumbled together.
And the runners-up are?
The runners-up for Best Driving, Racing, or Sports Game are Pocket Card Jockey Ride On, Pool Blitz, Expeditions, a Mud Runner game, and New Star GP.
And the winner?
The winner is MLB The Show 24. MLB The Show has kind of dominated the sports category for the last few years, and for good reason. It is just an excellent, excellent baseball game. And this year, I feel like it is marginally better than last year's entry. It has a few extra options and features, but even marginally better than one of the best baseball games of all time still makes this arguably the best baseball game of all time. And kind of hard to ignore that when selecting the winner in this category. It is extremely well worth it if you're looking for a good game of baseball.
All right, we have a new category for 2024, which is Best Hardware.
Again, I've reviewed a lot of hardware this year, and this is the best of the best.
So, what are the runners up?
The runners up for best hardware on Nintendo Switch in 2024 are the XPower wireless Switch controller ESO3 model, the Donaja Switch wireless controller, the Legame Switch wireless controller, the GameSir Tarantula Pro wireless controller, and the Nixie Master P1 2.4G wireless PC controller.
And the winner?
The winner for best hardware on Nintendo Switch in 2024 is XPower wireless Switch controller ESO1 model. And I should talk about a few things before going on here. First of all, I already mentioned the ESO3 model. For some reason, when you look on Amazon, these controllers both have exactly the same name, but the ESO1 is the one I'm talking about here. They look different, they play different, they have different features. The other thing I should mention is, for whatever reason, this controller is sold under multiple brand names. I'm calling it the XPower controller, but it's also sold under the brand names FNICSCAN, PPKKAI, and Reddening. Know that whichever brand you get, and they all kind of look a bit different in terms of their coloring and the pattern that's on it, but they're all shaped the same, they all have the same features. And I should note that 3 controllers were really close this year in terms of being selected as the best hardware. This one, the GameSir Tarantula Pro, and the Nixie Master P1 are all really good at different price points. But I feel like the XPower wireless Switch controller ESO1 being only $23 and still being just as good and in some ways better than a standard Nintendo Switch Pro controller, it is absolutely the best bang for your buck you will find in a Nintendo Switch controller, at least as far as anything I've ever encountered. And that in and of itself, I think, pushed it above the other ones. Just being so good and so inexpensive, absolute must buy if you're looking for a Nintendo Switch controller and don't want to spend much.
All right, next up is Best Miscellaneous Game.
All of these games are pretty unique and didn't really seem to fit the other categories.
So who are the runners up?
The runners up for Best Miscellaneous Game on Nintendo Switch in 2024 are Farewell North and Stray.
And the winner?
The winner is A Time Traveler's Guide to Past Delicacies.
Oh, why?
I know you're not a fan of this one, and it's an acquired taste. Not everyone is going to enjoy it. However, it is so weird, so unusual, and it's so its own thing, and it's clearly an art statement. I feel like no other game better exemplifies what it means to be a miscellaneous game than this one. You will not find a more miscellaneous game than A Time Traveler's Guide to Past Delicacies on Nintendo Switch in 2024.
All right, that does it for day 4 of the eShopperReviews 2024 Game Awards. Thank you for listening, and please come back tomorrow, January 17th, 2025, to see the highest honors, where we award the absolute best games to release on Nintendo Switch in 2024. And remember, if you want to read about the games mentioned here, head to eShopperReviews.com. And if you enjoyed this content, please consider heading over to our Patreon page to support eShopper Reviews and gain access to even more content. Thank you again, everyone. This has been Jen Ip
And Jake McNeil.
and we hope you've enjoyed this content.
Later.